pickleball.
It looks like lazy people's tennis, and I think that's what it is people don't want to run, but they want to do something.
It's ping pong without the table. Well,
it looks like shitty ping pong. I like ping pong. I don't get pickleball.
Who came up with this shit? Are there stars in pickleball? Are there guys? Jim Sarney was pointing out some local person. I think a woman is like the number one pickleball player. And how come she's not getting more attention? Because the game sucks. Has that replaced shuffleboard in most of these like 5-star senior residences?
It looks like a senior game. It looks like you want to be active.
From Century Village, right here in Pembroke Pines, it's the National Senior Pickleball Championship. And today, Irving Schwartz is going to go out there. Irving's undefeated now in singles and doubles.
And Saul Bernstein.
The B'nai B'rith is backing today's event. Never mind. I don't think we'll see a lot of old Jewish people in Century Village playing pickleball. Is there a demand in front of the Homeowners Association to put in some courts? Take out the shuffleboard? They have tennis courts there. My mother was always telling me, why don't you come here and play tennis? Because there's like a chalk outline of the last guy that played tennis on the court. Zakovich, I think was his name. Irving.
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Very pleasant. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you here on the Wednesday edition of the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, and the handsome one over there is one Mike Lubitz. Pickleball, doesn't it seem like one of those sports they would offer on a cruise ship?
It's crazy because another friend of ours, I was with the professor yesterday, and we saw a friend of ours who's 40-something, 30. I mean, they're young. They're in the younger side, had just come from playing 2 games of pickleball. And Ken and I just looked at it. And remember, Ken did a whole slide mocking pickleball Friday, mocking everyone. Now they have these fakakta outfits. And we just looked at each other and we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, I'm not as good as the real players. And I was like, wait, what? Say that again. The real. I'm like, what the fuck's a real?
I would imagine there are guys that are good at it. There are people that are good at throwing darts. I'm not particularly great, even though I have a decent eye and hand-eye coordination. I never was great at that. It never ceases to amaze. If ever you're so bored that you're watching a dart throwing tournament on ESPN3 or something along those lines. Remember during the pandemic? It was unbelievable, right? Oh, here we go. We're going all the way to England today, and we're in the pub here, and everybody's got a couple of pints of Guinness, and we're here for the dart throwing tournament, and these guys never missed. It was like bullseye after bullseye after bullseye. Pretty amazing. What was the other thing? What's that game called where you throw the bean bag into a hole?
Oh, cornhole.
Cornhole.
Loves some cornhole. ESPN loves some cornhole.
Cornhole. They got this fat blob of a human being, and we're supposed to celebrate him like he was LeBron James because he can throw a beanbag into a hole from 30 feet away, which I'm not very good at either, even though I should be good at those kind of games. I mean, I was a decent free throw shooter. I could hoist it from 30. Golf, I could make some putts, even though I wasn't a great golfer. Still, I could get around the green there, and every now and then, even though, you might send one 30 feet past the hole, the next one might go in from 50. That's the way it was. I mean, it was hit or miss. A lot of that stuff. But the aim in general was good, and yet no good at cornhole, no good at throwing darts, Libby. I don't know about you, but pickleball, doesn't it seem like one of those things you would play on the deck of a cruise ship? Because it was the prohibitive winds that were coming in. Obviously, it would be very difficult for them to set up a tennis court on a cruise ship. You ever notice this, too, that the sporting availabilities and opportunities are never like they are outlined in the brochure on cruise ships and exotic island destinations where, you have one of these all-inclusive places like a Sandals, and they show you, oh, my God, you're going to be playing volleyball on the beach. And they have like Karch Karai out there, supposedly, playing in the video. But then when you get out there, you can't even find a ball that's inflated. It's almost as if you had gone into the New England Patriots locker room and said, hey, anybody got a ball we can use? And all of them were devoid of air. You find that to be true, Lubie, that whenever they outline the wonderful recreational opportunities there are on cruise ships and on these all-inclusive island Jamaica resorts, the actual facilities actually are pathetic.
Yeah, they suck. They're never what the brochure says.
Nothing. Yeah. The bowling, you're setting up little plastic pins, but they show like Don Carter winning the Firestone Tournament of Champions in the video. Like, where are the bowling alleys? Oh, they're right there. Yeah, no, you set up the pins. Yeah, here. Oh, we only have 9 today. Some little kid ran off with the other one. Somebody's dog. Usually it's bogus, right? Very much like we talk about with the hotels and the keys that look nothing like the brochure. That happens to me a lot. All right, for years and years and years, Lubie, there's been this debate, and it's applicable almost across the entire sports landscape here in South Florida because we are such a weird place when it comes to sports. I don't know. A WIOD was once known as, and can you imagine whoever wrote this jingle up? And you would have fired your ad agency immediately, and your marketing people, your people that are doing imaging. Someplace special for sports.
Oh, Jesus.
And they had, one of those little, clips where I go, WIOD, someplace special for sports. I literally, I choked every time I had to say something like that. And I rarely use the phrase. And the PD'd come running down the hall and go, hey, when are you going to call this place what it is? Someplace special for sports, Steve. Just stick to the script, huh? You got to go off on your own. You got to ad lib. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, because you guys are stupid. Like it sounds like something you would hear in the 60s. The problem is it was probably the 80s and 90s.
Well, this was circa late 80s when I got involved there. Someplace special for sports. Chris Myers, went on to great fame and fortune. He was one of those guys that had to sit there coming in right after the jingle. Someplace special for sports. Hi, everybody. Chris Myers with Sports Talk 610. Embarrassing, isn't it?
Yes.
In between the Phil Hendry show and Sports Talk 610, they're playing this silly jingle that was so outdated it was a joke. It sounded like an old cigarette commercial. Someplace special for sports. But it was always a debate, back in that time because it preceded, talking like late 80s. You had the Heat come into existence in 88. So the speculation about whether or not we were going to get a basketball team had started to steamroll, maybe a couple of years prior? 1986, somewhere in there. You were 3 years old?
Young, yeah. The Heat had been around pretty much my whole life.
Okay.
The Marlins, I remember the Marlins stuff. I remember the Panthers stuff. The Heat were here.
Marlins was a wild debate because, it wasn't exactly an ideal place to play baseball in terms of what facilities were available. Mm-hmm. So not only were you going to have to debate whether or not a baseball team was A, going to come here, B, be able to sustain itself with a fan base that was very diverse and didn't necessarily show any inclination. The thought was that the Latin people would carry this team and that it would be very successful because of that. And that there was this international flow. The people that are coming from like South America, do they think right away, hey, you know what we ought to do? Let's go to a Marlins game. Or are they spending lavish amounts of money on themselves at the Fountain Blue and, getting involved in things that are on a very high scale financial level? I don't know. Maybe they like the baseball. I'm not sure. Can I say that without getting canceled? The cancel culture, that's in my head now.
Baseball's not a world. Soccer's world. South America is soccer. Baseball's big in the Caribbean, and I don't even know if it's parts of Europe. Like baseball's not like they have cricket. So Americans, well, that's close. It's not close, and they're very clear to tell you it's not close, and very clear to tell you they're different. Like baseball is not a sport that has traveled like soccer is. Basketball has. Even American football to a certain extent in Europe is sort of picked up. Baseball hasn't. Like that was one of the stupidest things they ever thought. Like Latin Americans really are soccer fans. They're not really big. Dominican Republic and Cuba love baseball. The rest of the Latin American countries are not big baseball people. It's not a thing that they follow.
So that might have been marketing mistake number 1.
100%.
The notion that these Latin American tourists were going to be flocking to Marlins games as soon as they opened up the stadium. So it was always debated. It really was. For a long period of time. And it's still debatable, is it not? Whether or not baseball is successful here in South Florida, would you say?
100%.
The only people so far that I think it's been really successful for were Laurie and Sampson.
Yes.
Who cashed in billions. Everybody else has left here kicking and screaming, have they not? John Henry under the cover of darkness. Deal like the Baltimore Colts did when they moved to Indianapolis and just backed up the vans in the middle of the night and said, oh, by the way, sold the team. And at first, we knew of the new owner, Jeffrey Loria, that he was being sued in court by his former partners from Montreal, right here in Miami, because he apparently stiffed him in Donald Trumpian type fashion. And all of a sudden, the team they thought they had a piece of was no longer a team that they actually had a piece of. It was somebody else's team that was bought, maybe with their money. And who benefited in the end? I guess those two people, right? Laurie and Sampson.
Yep.
The son-in-law and Pops, who went from buying Dayglow Jesus paintings to all of a sudden he's in the bidding at Sotheby's for a Van Gogh.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's an original there, Jeff. Okay.
Scumbag.
Somebody said I looked like Jeffrey Loria at one point in time. Do I look like Jeffrey Loria?
I don't think so.
I found that insulting. I really did.
It is insulting, and I would say no.
Who was the other guy? Tim Russert. Somebody said I looked like Tim Russert. Do I look like Tim Russert? Remember the newsman Tim Russert? I found that somewhat insulting.
It is insulting. Look, when you put on weight,
he looked like Captain Kangaroo, didn't he? What was that? Chuck McCann? Was that the guy? No, Kangaroo wasn't Chuck McCann, but you remember the Chuck McCann show? Any of you New Yorkers out there? Chuck McCann. Didn't Tim Russert look? He was a dead ringer for Chuck McCann, if you remember that show. All right, we're digressing here into an area that is too bizarre to even bring it back to what we were talking about, which is, and there's a story involved here, and we go back to 1992. Which was the height of the debates about whether or not baseball was going to come here. I don't know that it was any certainty then. The local chapter, whoever was trying to campaign to get baseball here, whatever comprised that particular committee and group of people, were trying to demonstrate to Major League Baseball that baseball could work here in South Florida and it could work at Joe Robbie Stadium. So they staged a series of exhibitions. I always thought that this was one game, but just looking back and Googling the dates and everything, apparently, I guess it was what? Did they play 4 or 5 games, the Orioles and the Yankees, in 1992 at Joe Robbie Stadium? Because I remember being at one specifically, and it stands out to me for a very, it was a vivid and valid reason. Because it involved what could have been a potentially very embarrassing incident in my life, where and we were all excited about it. So naturally, we were covering it, and WIOD, where I was working at the time, someplace special for sports, wanted to be exactly that. They wanted to prove there was someplace special for sports. So I was assigned to go out there and do a pregame show for the exhibition between the Yankees and the Orioles, even though I don't believe we were carrying the game on the radio. I'm not sure that anybody was, but nonetheless, I'm there for like the usual. I mean, the length of pregame shows was predicated. We didn't realize this was baseball, that you can summarize everything going into the game to give people some idea what's going on. Well, so-and-so's a left-hander. He likes to throw that four-seamer. You can capsulize all that in about 10 minutes, which I guess you could for football too, could you not? Do you need a 4-hour pregame show?
Oh, no.
To set yourself up for a football game or even the entire league slate of football games? Do you
No,
need that much time?
An hour. You can break it into like 3 segments, 4 segments, an hour. These fakakta 3 or 4 hour pregames, I think, are the most stupid, ridiculous things ever.
Right, and we were very happy to participate in that one from Rick K. Sotomark. There,
we didn't. Ours wasn't more than 2 hours, was it? We didn't do one that was.
I think we were doing 2.
Yeah,
I believe, which is reasonable.
Yeah, it's fine. You do the national, and then you do the Dolphins. These 3 or 4 hour pregames.
Well, I mean, they were obviously designed as sometimes, and I guess this was, I don't know if it's true anymore. It might be, because many of these deals now, radio deals where a station becomes the flagship, are not predicated upon them bidding enormous amounts of money for the rights, but are more brought about because the team gets to sell all the advertising in the game. And that might have been the case even with huge rights fees attached. I think, I want to say that WIOD was paying like $1 million a year or something for Dolphins rights.
Oh, Jesus.
And that was back in the 80s. Like it was $1 million a year. And it might have been $1 million for all of the Kane stuff, which they made you carry the basketball and baseball games. All that anybody wanted was the football games back then. So we wanted to prove ourselves as, the station, the leader when it came to sports. 2-hour pregame show. And naturally, I'm prepared to do it because, I had gone out and we really had tied one on. And so I'm scrambling that morning to find a cassette tape because I was going to record some interviews, and I was supposed to specifically get Cal Ripken Jr. to do an interview with me. And, I was going to play that during a pregame show. So anyway, make a long story even longer. I'm scrambling to find, back in the day there, you used to actually record stuff on a cassette tape. And then you would take the cassette tape. If you had time, you would transfer the sound onto some other platform so that you could play it on the air. But in this case, I was going to have to take the cassette tape, cue it up to the spot where the interview began, and then just play it out of a cassette recorder on the air, which was attached in, piped into whatever the broadcast was. And my man, Scotty Mack, was the producer on this thing. So we're in the press box at Joe Robbie Stadium, getting set for the game. As I'm leaving the house, though, I realized I can't find a cassette tape. And sure enough, I stumble outside the door there, and outside my door is a pile of shit. All right. And what happened was this woman that I was seeing at the time, who I was in the process of breaking up with, although I hadn't let her know that yet, had found out that we were no longer going to be an item because I hadn't returned. She realized it after I didn't return 30 of her calls. And I thought I could just slip out of this thing, slipping into darkness. And, you're thinking, am I really worth chasing? No. I mean, if the guy's not returning your calls, what? Do you need an explanation? Why is it necessary to provide an explanation as to why you're no longer going to be involved in seeing this person?
They call it ghosting now. And I realized, I did that a lot. Like, because I never thought, like, if I didn't give a shit about you, I figured, like, why would you give a shit about me?
Exactly. There was somebody put up on social media the other day, if somebody, let you know that they had a crush on you, what would your advice to them be? And I said, run. 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 Got to be out of your mind. Kind of, punishment are you willing to subject yourself to? Anyway, back at that time, and maybe the karma is getting to me here because, I'm 0 for 2 in marriages. And as I've been saying, I'm pretty close to having 2 strikes.
Been in a full count.
This is one of those deals where you're looking back at the umpire. I thought that was outside. What are you talking about? As he's ringing you up with strike 3. It can happen even if you don't have an official split, Like I always say, Lubie, once the indifference sets in, it's a whole different ballgame. So anyway, this woman, apparently, while I was sleeping, and I had gotten in really late, and there was nothing at my door when I got in at 4 a.m. She must have come to my house at 6 or 7 a.m. And dropped off this stuff because I had left some stuff at her place. It was inconsequential stuff that I never would have expected or asked to have returned. It was nothing. It was like some pens, a couple of, notebooks, whatever that I had, maybe I had gone to her place after working one day and just left this stuff there. And it also included what I thought was a blank cassette tape. All right. So I'm saying, oh, fuck, man, so-and-so was here. That's great. And sorry, but thank you for dropping off the cassette tape because I was desperately in search of one. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to, grab one before I got to the stadium. So I'm running out the door now with this cassette tape. I get in there in time. I get a Cal Ripken Jr. interview. And very, very gracious, as he always was. And I'm thinking, this is going to be wonderful here. I'm going to kill it on this pregame show because I know a little bit about baseball. The Dodgers, the Yankees were one of the teams. And, the Orioles were prominent at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was a fairly easy game to talk up. And I do this brilliant intro. I did tell my producer, I said, look, when this interview's over, because I didn't have time to erase the stuff on the tape. You used to take a tape and just, throw it over this magnetic thing and it would erase everything that was on there. And so you were starting fresh. So you weren't like going over sound. You didn't have sound duplicating itself. It wasn't as sophisticated as it is today where you can clean up anything in a second with a computer.
Yeah.
So I told Scotty Mack, I said, listen, I don't know what's on this tape, okay? I didn't have time to erase it. So as soon as this interview ends, as soon as he says, thank you, Jeff, cut this off, no matter what, all right? Just make sure that you shut the tape off.
Because I always get that part of the story. I didn't realize that you did get to the interview. Like,
yes.
We did air. The interview was fine. It was Scotty Mack being Scotty Mack. From the stories of Scotty Mack and my dealings with Scotty Mack, I blame you for believing in Scotty Mack.
He swore to me there was no way he was going to let this tape play. Now, the setup in the press box is such that the tape machine was at a level much higher than the one I was sitting at. You would have had to actually walk up the stairs to the second level there of this thing. It wasn't like the booth was that large, but you would have to go up the stairs. You know how the coach's box is, so the coaches are all sitting high above the guys that are in the front row. It's kind of set up like that, little booth. So I tell Scotty Mac, make sure you turn this off the minute that this interview is over. As soon as he says thank you, boom, hit that fucking.
Okay, and I'm trying to interrupt this, but you've told the story tons of times, but we've never actually broken it down. Like, did you do the interview and it go right on air, or you did the interview and
I did the interview on a tape?
No, but I'm saying like you did the interview and there was time between, right? Like as a producer, you would have time.
I did the interview before the game, well before the game and before the show started.
Yeah, so he would have time to look. Again, whenever we did stuff, I would always listen to the beginning and end and make sure it's clean. That's what you're supposed to do. So his job is to disregard anything you fucking say, and on his own accord, make sure before is clean and the end is clean, so he knows when to start it and when to end it. Especially in those times.
That would be responsible.
It's not like now where like you can see the audio, you can fuss with it, like. Right. Okay, I'm trying to either.
There was a little bit of a risk element in playing any kind of tape material, especially under those circumstances, and it was a perfect storm of negativity, where A, I was unprepared to begin with because I didn't have a cassette tape. B, I was lucky, or felt I was, to find this tape outside my front door. Think about the circumstances under which this was acquired, Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
Suspect at best. And no time to check anything. I get a good interview with Cal Ripken Jr. that I'm very pleased with, and I can't wait for the fans, the listening audience out there that are coming to the game to hear this particular piece. I tell Scotty Mac to turn this thing off the second that it's over, and as it's playing, I'm thinking, wow, this is good. I don't know. I was thinking about what I was doing the night before, and I was spacing out a little bit. Getting ready to try and come up with something new for the next segment. And sure enough, I turn around as the interview's ending, and there's no Scotty Mac. He's in the bathroom. So I'm scrambling, thinking, I got to shut this tape off. And before I get a chance to get to it, I hear, you are the most obnoxious, self-indulgent piece of shit that I have ever known in my life. And it turned out the reason that the tape was included was that she actually thought I was going to listen to it and listen to her scathing indictment and assassination of what little character she thought I had to begin with.
Which you never would have. Like, you would never listen to that tape.
Never. What did I do with it? She left the tape there. She didn't specify, that this was something that I had to listen to because it was going to be her final statement. Because what is it? We were telling Mayo this the other day on the show. You don't always have to get the final word. That's a big mistake that people make.
Yep.
Let somebody else have the last word. What's the difference? In the end, is it going to matter that you, in their eyes, lost an argument because they came back and called you a scumbag one more time than you were able to call them? No, you're a scumbag. Wasn't like she was going to enlighten me with any of this stuff. I mean, it was a bit of an extreme take, I thought, on a couple of things.
Well, especially on the airwaves, and especially when there's probably thousands of people listening, because people listen to the radio a lot then.
It was very much like there was a show where there's a talk show host, and he does like all this relationship stuff, and the women love the guy. And he listens to them whine and complain and fetch about their marriages and their boyfriends and their relationships, and he always very patiently and lovingly guides them through it and says, "Don't worry, Susan, it's all going to be all right." And calms them down, and they love the guy. And then, the usual thing, right? And this killed a couple of careers in sportscasting where somebody left a live mic open. And while the live mic was open, the guy in this case, in this drama, is saying, "What a bunch of fucking..." It goes on, on a 5-minute soliloquy about how much he hates and despises women and think they're all assholes that listen to his show. Well, guess what? Ding, ding, ding. End of show. So I thought that could have been, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe I was the only guy that kind of figured out what was going on there. But and it only played for a few seconds, but it was a few of the most terrifying seconds of my broadcasting career. And that's what I remember about the advent of baseball here in South Florida. That being said, is it not? Here we are. I mean, that was 1992, Mike Lubie Lubitz. So we're talking 31 years later. And the debate was, and the people would call in, hey, Defo, this is great, man. I mean, they sold it out today, Yankees and the Orioles. You think they can sustain that over an entire season with a losing expansion club? Thanks so much. I'll hang up and listen. And you're like, well, you never know. It is a weird sports market, but we don't have anything else here at this time. You know, we had the infant stages of the Heat, which the Heat, they didn't flounder at the bottom for as long as I think, did they? Because they were getting high draft picks after the first year.
Right. So they made the playoffs. They just weren't going to win. I remember them playing the Bulls at least once, and that was a total disaster. And they had Lagery. Lagery, from what you said, is a nice guy. He was not a
great guy. I don't think he was doing a lot of hardcore coaching.
He wasn't like a strategist, like a strategist.
He was playing golf. I mean, with these guys. 5 hours before game time. They weren't in the gym. What are you talking about? There was no need to be either with most of the guys that he had. They weren't floundering at the bottom, though, for that long. I'll have to go back and check my Heat history there. I mean, they were awful in the first year, and I want to say almost equally so in the second year. With slight, they fired Rothstein in the middle of the second year. So, it couldn't have been going that well. But I think I want to say, didn't they drafted Glenn Rice, and then they had not the worst of teammates around him. And did they not make the playoffs, like you said, maybe as a non-contending entity, but nonetheless made the postseason sometime before '93? They had to, did they not?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out.
So I mean, we weren't sure what this was going to do, and here's the thing. I guess is this the 31st year of Marlins baseball, or are they celebrating their 30th year? I can't do the math on that because I don't know whether to count the first. How do you count the first year? I want to say it's 31.
How does that work? Because I haven't you're not hearing them talk about 30 years of Marlins.
Did they do that last year and we just missed the whole season? Well,
it may have been,
which illustrates the point here that nobody gives a flying one about what we're talking about.
Well, maybe because again they sucked last year, so we didn't talk any Marlins last year. We weren't on the station, so we didn't feel bad not talking Marlins. No. So it would make sense that last year was the year that they celebrated it, because we are paying attention this year. We are talking about it, and I have not seen any insignias or any symbols or anything. So maybe this is year 31. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know how that works, because it did start in '93, and this is 2023. So that's 30 years. But
I'm gonna say you had to count '93 as the first year. Yes, so I'm gonna go 31 on this.
This may be 30.
Does anybody know how to do this math when it comes to
Sarni thing? So Sarni
annual type of designations and distinctions. And I never can, and especially with winter sports when it's like the 22-23 season. So how many years is it? Just tell me. That's what you want to know. But is the debate not still very much the same? I mean, going back, I had a personal investment in debating these topics, so maybe that's why they stand out to me. But is it not essentially the same? It's still a question mark. I think, Major League Baseball is not going anywhere. You don't hear any talk of contraction anymore in Major League Baseball. Have you noticed that? There's never that threat. You don't even hear, you have a franchise moving, the Oakland A's, but it's kind of like a glacier-like speed, although that seems to be speeding up. Is it not, you environmentalists out there? Who, and of course, the MAGA people, there ain't nothing going on here. Just because half the world's on fire, why should we pay attention to the environment?
Yeah, have you been outside?
Global warming, man. That's some kind of hoax.
I know how Florida gets hot, but God damn it.
Everywhere else in the country, it's worse.
I almost passed out yesterday. I was cleaning my pool for 15 minutes, and I was drenched in sweat. I'm like, and I was in the shade.
The slightest semblance of shade, even a momentary small cloud cover while on an afternoon walk of life, is extremely welcome. I never used to be that way. I wanted every ray of sunshine to hit me and blast me right in the face.
Well, it's
like
different.
A laser beam.
No, it's different. We're getting into like the hundreds. I'm like, I don't remember that. This isn't Arizona. I don't remember hundreds. Like, it's fucking hot. Like, it's just different. It's different, and something's different.
You know what? I guess that's lost on the grand old party, right? Because they don't see any problem with any of this, right? Mountains, mountain ranges just burning to the ground. All of the stuff that's happening. Earthquakes in places that never had them before. And just a coincidence. It's bizarre coincidence. All right, so getting back to the question, because we haven't even gotten into this game last night, Lubie. What do you think? 32 minutes of prelude to a Marlins game. Is that what it's going to take? I mean, that's what that was the big challenge when you got to the dog days of summer. Could you make a 4-hour show out of a baseball game?
Oh no, I mean, we're not going to do that. I mean, we're never going to do that. But we can do like 30 minutes.
Well, this was great last night, though, and I found myself, with a large allegiance. See, it was common for me, and I could make this admission now, but I really felt that this was the truth. Although, if you're going to go all the way, then it's far better to be prosperous, and you would root for the local teams to win if you were talking about stimulating conversation and having to go ahead and do any form of analysis. For some reason, it's a lot easier to analyze negativity, is it not?
In short spurts. What I think we've learned is, like, if you're just, like, you talk about indifference, like if you're
this
just
guy sucks, that guy sucks, this guy's an idiot, this guy's a fool.
Like if it's a team that's supposed to be good and they're bad, yes, fans love bitching. But the problem is if they're bad year in, year out, fans just don't give a shit. So that's long-term failure is not good. Short-term failure is. Yes, I will agree with you.
What would you say the Mets have been, bad year in and year out for the most part?
Yes, that's the problem.
Overall, in terms of expectations versus results.
That's why I give their fans credit is they have been, it's like the Jets. They fail way more than they succeed, yet their fans are still very loyal. And I give them a lot of credit for that.
There's no panic in New York right now. Giant headline, Buck won't stop here. Epler gives support to under fire manager. GM will not deal top prospects for quick fix. Steve Cohn is pictured there, the owner who's blowing $365 million on this bunch of stiffs. And he's not going to meddle. He's not going to interfere. He's not going to do a Steinbrenner, start throwing pork chops around in the clubhouse, and taking on Reggie Jackson or whatever. None of that's going to happen. So is that going to produce any results? Probably not. But the anxiety is created. Why? Because they're doing well? No, because they suck. Where that might have been 2 pages of the New York Post sports section, today it's 4. And a variety of different angles are being taken on that. So I always thought that. I thought that negativity was really the catalyst that made sports talk successful as a format. That people just like to call in and fetch. You are almost a perfect example of it, or were. I don't know if you're changing. You're having a little bit of a metamorphosis, but not totally, I would have to say. And it's evident to people that watch and listen to the show that, you love to hate your own teams. The teams that you root for, you hate the most.
I wouldn't go that far.
You hate your teams the way the professor hates the Boston Celtics. Still will never forget you standing in front of that television set at Landlubbers. Alex Sufreen was looking on in shock and in horror, much like I was, as you were in some kind of bizarre, uncontrollable Baker acting type of fit. And we're thinking, what's going on here? And you were screaming, that's it. They're mailing it in. They're mailing it in. And it was 1-0 in favor of like the Bulls over the Heat. They made one free throw, 1 of 2 to start the ball game about a minute and a half in.
Game of the year, and it was versus like the Bobcats, and it was like the first 2 minutes of the game, of an NBA game of all things.
You were beside yourself. I mean, almost in need of being tasered. If a cop had shown up, they might have shot you. I mean, it'd been justified. There'd have been no trial. What do you make of this, too? Just an aside here before we get into this ball game last night. I'm not dodging it. I really enjoyed it.
Sort of are. We're 40 minutes in.
Talking about sex tapes.
And it was a good game. There's no reason to dodge it. It was good on every level. Every account was really good.
But the Scott Peterson thing, the jury is, making its deliberations, and they weren't able to reach a conclusion on the first day. The cop that was there at Stoneman Douglas, and he didn't go in. It was like 45 minutes later, I guess, that somebody. Oh, was that the case? That was Uvalde was. What was that? That was like 70 minutes or something like that. But he was there. He was on the scene. He was a security guy, I guess, off duty as a policeman, and seemed like a reasonably decent human being. Probably close to retirement from the police force. He's just copping a few extra bucks. He's hanging out at the high school. He's not figuring anything is going to go on like this, is he? Here in South Florida,
Douglas.
Yeah, I mean he's in Parkland, right? Basically, yes. I mean, pretty spiffy area.
It's Parkland. It's 100% Parkland. It's one of the richer areas in all of Florida. It's fucking.
Right. You're not anticipating this kind of problem. All right, should he have been? I guess. I mean, it wasn't like it hadn't happened before. But you could be on the job there, and you're talking, "Hey, little Johnny, how's it going, man? You still playing basketball? Good. I think you're going to make the varsity next year." I don't know what kind of guy he was or what kind of relationship he had with the students there. But can you? I mean, even if you considered him to be the worst of cowards, can you convict this guy of criminal charges for not going in and taking down this Nicholas Cruz kid? What do you think, Lubie? I mean, is he culpable, and should he be, considered guilty of a criminal activity for not entering the school? What do you think?
I think he didn't do his job. I think he should have been fired if he was still a cop or even a security officer. I do not think he should face charges. I mean, again,
how could you convict him of a crime there? I mean, as much as you might despise, his reaction, which I'm not sure that despicable is the way to look at it. Not everybody's a hero. I mean, it's unfortunate that wasn't his characteristic. And you would have loved it, right? I mean, if the guy went in there and took out the shooter before any damage was done, great.
It would have been amazing. But again,
great ending, I mean, to a tragic story.
Yeah, I mean, look, you would want them to do what they're trained to do. You'd want them to go and risk their life for everyone. But again, and it's why I don't think teachers should have guns. He's an officer. He wasn't brand new. He was trained for these situations, and he was scared shitless and did nothing. So just think about what a teacher's going to do. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I think he shouldn't be a cop anymore. I wouldn't trust him to be a cop, but I'm not going to put him in for a crime because stuff happens. Look, maybe he was trained to wait for backup. Again, cops are always trained to not be the first one in.
Even if he froze, is he a criminal?
I think I don't even want to call him a jerk. I think he just didn't do his job. And that's sad. But yeah, again, I'm not going to say he should go to prison for it. Like, no, he didn't commit the act. The fucking lunatic did.
Correct. And his reaction to it wasn't what you would have hoped for in that spot, but does not make him a criminal. That's, I think that's a stretch. I really do. And, I don't know how it would impact others in terms of their level of bravery. I mean, not everybody's the same, Mike Lubie. Some people, without even the slightest regard for their own safety, would have gone running in there and attempted to take the guy out, or at least gone in there and tried to scope out the situation, and even if waiting for backup or whatever, it would have been able to guide them to the right place if he had gone in there and found it. But I don't know how you could convict him of criminal activity.
No, it sucks. It's sad. It's why police need to be trained, I think, better than they're trained. I think it's why the whole gun culture scares the shit out of me because everyone just assumes it's so easy to go in there and shoot up people. It's to go take a life, good or bad, is not easy. We're not trained as humans to kill other humans. And even people who are trained, still your human nature is to preserve life, especially a cop, a doctor. Their job is to save lives, not end lives. So to just assume, oh, there's a guy, I'm going to go kill him.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like he ran off the grounds. I mean,
no, he didn't run away.
Was there.
He stayed. Look, and again, we know police are trained to wait for backup a lot of the time because you go in there, you could just shoot innocent people as much as the other guy can. Like,
sure.
So again, I would rather him have saved lives. I would rather him have done more.
Not a situation that he was necessarily thinking was about to pop.
Exactly, especially
all of a sudden you're in dire straits.
A high school, and it's one of the best high schools, not in the state, in the country. Douglas at the time, I think it still is academically one of the best schools in the country. You're not expecting some shit. This is
well, and there were other people along the chain there that were probably more guilty of neglect in that spot than this guy was. Where I mean, there were obvious signs with this kid that something was up, and they just continued to ignore them. And he easily waltzed in there and was able to do this damage. But that case is very curious to me. The jury being out for over a day, I'm not sure, that we can venture a guess. Well, when the OJ jury came back after 12 minutes, I thought, okay, the guy's a goner, right? The evidence was overwhelming. And, of course, we were all shocked. It was right up there with the Brady Quinn announcement, wasn't it? Or non-Brady Quinn, the Ted Ginn Jr. All right, we'll get into this ball game because it was interesting from a lot of different fronts, including the fact that after 30 years, see, now it wouldn't take that much to win me over as a baseball fan. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm spending more time watching sports in front of the television set than I would care to admit to, because I'm almost going toe to toe with Sarney at this stage.
Oh, and Sarney did explain it. Brian's right. This is their 30th season, but in Marlins fashion, they're going to celebrate it in their 31st season.
What?
This is their 30th season. If you do the math, it is. It might even be their 31st, honestly. But when I try to count it out, but they've announced that they're going to celebrate it in 2023, 2024 is what.
This is such simple math, though, that we should be able to make this deduction without having to do. I mean, do we really need to go back to the entire history of Marlins baseball and go year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
2002 was their 10th season. 2012 was their 20th season. 2022 was their 30th season. I did.
So they have already had their 30th season, and this would be their 31st. But they're going to celebrate the 30th anniversary next year.
But Brian's estimation, he's right. It is It is 30 years since their first season. Okay, so you could celebrate it this year as well. They're not doing that either.
Why celebrate something that actually gives you some mark of distinction that they lasted 30 years here? Because remember the speculation they were going to move? They were going to move to San Antonio. You had that cracker judge there sitting there with Jeffrey Loria in the box, and he was saying, I'm going to sell this team to this guy. You guys better show up. Nothing like trying to intimidate your fans into coming out to the ballpark to see a product that they don't think is very good. That was a brilliant strategy being exhibited by and put into play by Laurie and Sampson. You guys better watch us or else. Okay, we'll do that. The A's moving out of Oakland, people they don't seem to be overwhelmingly sentimental about that, do they? The people in Oakland, is that a shaft job or was that an inevitability because nobody showed up to their ball games? What do you think, Lubie? I mean, and the team would naturally say, well, we never had a facility that anybody really wanted to come to. If your team is winning, usually the people will find their way to the park eventually. The A's had remarkable runs there with Billy Ball and all of that stuff. And year after year were one of probably the second most surprising team behind the Tampa Bay Rays, were they not? In terms of measure of success that they were able and measure of achievement that they were able to accomplish versus any sort of expectation that you had for, in the A's case, probably the most nondescript roster that you could find in Major League Baseball. Can you name a single Oakland A?
No. You used to be able to at least be able to name their pitchers or like 2 or 3 pitchers.
Is Catfish Hunter still with the A's? I don't think so.
Fuck Catfish Hunter, Barry Zito. So Sarney corrected himself. He said the Marlins are celebrating it this season, even though, again, I have yet to see anything 30th anywhere. I've caught some of their games. We've spoken to some of their people.
I haven't seen a reference.
Nothing mentioned about 30th at all, which you would think is a sort of a big deal, especially since they have won 2 titles. You would think they would do more, but they're the Marlins. He said the Panthers are celebrating it this upcoming season again because baseball's within 1 year. Hockey's 2023 to 2024. The Panthers will celebrate it this upcoming season. The Marlins are celebrating.
Pretty amazing, yeah. I mean, both of those franchises have been under immense scrutiny in terms of whether or not they would ever be considered successful. There's something else in play here, though, that we don't understand, isn't there, Lubie? Where how is it possible that you could have what appears to be a failing franchise on virtually every front and still sustain yourself for 30 years? And the escalation of the value of the franchise, is that enough to account for it? Or would you say that the franchise is worth less than did Sherman pay $1.4 billion for this thing? Was that the number? Incredible. And could there possibly, I mean, with the lease they have, very favorable at Lone Shark Park, that's one thing. I mean, definitely, who's going to be swimming in the red ink that is left in the wake of the Marlins? the city, right?
Oh yeah, because they'll make money. Whenever they sell it again, they'll make money. The franchises always go up because the TV deals always go up.
All right. We got to run. We'll come back. We'll have our analysis on this ball game. Tony Segreto is going to do some old school with us. My good friend Brad Jacobs, inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame, talk a little sweet science later on in the program around 8:30. Looking forward to that. Quite a distinction going into this year's class. And I started thinking about just the things that I'm aware of that Brad did in boxing, and wow, of diverse and incredible career. So well worthy of the distinction of being a Hall of Famer. And we'll come back with more in a moment. Now that.
The time.
It's 7:48.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. When you look at the exploration and what's going on today, I mean, what was your reaction to what was there on Mars? Were you expecting to see like an Arby's franchise up there, or did you have a pretty clear picture of what they were going to find?
No, but at least a Starbucks. Come on now.
The only way to get your morning started is with Defo, joined by Lubie, right here on the Defo Show.
All right, what about the game? Welcome back to the show. We kickstart this thing again, Mike Lubitz. Is that the way this works? But welcome back to the show. What a game last night. Boy, what a game last night. My old Ron Harrison thing. I won't tell that story again, but nonetheless, Marlins 10, Red Sox 1. We were saying and speculating, and now that we really are adaptable, are we not, Lubie? We become an expert on whatever the current fad is.
I mean, we know, but baseball, you do try to force in. It's just people don't give a shit. So unlike Sarnia, we're not going to force feed it. Like, you throw it in a little throughout the season because it is going on. We're just not going to inundate people with a sport they don't give a crap about. So when the Marlins are good, we don't look like phonies jumping on to me at least, jumping on the bandwagon, because we've talked about it. We've tried at least.
I didn't anticipate this at all. I really didn't. I didn't realize. I knew nothing of Yuri Perez. I had heard the name very scantily compared to other supposed phenoms that were going to come up out of the Marlins system that were going to, be able to fill in for the tragic loss of Jose Fernandez in the Marlins rotation, and that you were going to have this hardcore of maybe 2-3 really stud young pitchers, which you can't always count on all of them coming through over the duration of a season. But if you can get one or two of them to really, two is exceptional. One is enough. If you have one young guy, some young guy, you have some young guy, one young guy that can deliver over the course of a season, it's pretty remarkable. And we've seen various forms of mania attached to that, including Fernando mania and Dontrell mania. We experienced it right here in town. The Yuri Perez thing, do you realize his earned run average the lowest of any major league pitcher in the month of June at 0.3 something? Incredible. We have two guys on this team that seem to be lifeless and lacking completely in any sort of color or distinction going into the season, with the exception that they were going to waste the career of the Cy Young Award-winning Sandy Alcantara. Didn't you feel that was more of a storyline going into the season, that there was somehow, because of the lack of run support and eventually the losing, this guy was going to get tired of it, and he was going to start, even though he's not seemingly inclined. I mean, have you ever seen Sandy Alcantara bitch about anything?
No, in the middle of him being a great pitcher and them sucking, he's the one guy that stayed.
Yes.
He just took his big deal and was definitely a Yankees or an Angels or a Dodgers would have given him more money than the Marlins gave him. He wanted to be here. He wanted to be a linchpin in the middle of the disaster. It was actually admirable and sad all under once.
Very noble. Yes.
It was like fucking Dame. It was like the Damian Lillard nonsense.
Imagine, yes. I mean, his agent is probably screaming, "Listen, Sandy, you're nuts.
Yeah, 100%.
These people will turn on you in a heartbeat." But he comes back here, and you never would have thought that he would go in the tank, and the rest of the team would be supporting him. But that's somewhat been the case. Although, and the announcers are constantly referencing the fact that, he got the sign out in order. I think he snapped out of it. I'm not sure I'm convinced of that yet. I mean, does one game constitute ending a slump once and for all?
I did like the way he finished the last start. The fact that they didn't just yank him. He ended up going, after giving up 5 runs by the second inning, he ended up going 7 innings and didn't give up anything the last 5. And he started rough yesterday, as you made sure to point out, but the last 5 innings he pitched really well. So it's nice to see.
He scared me early. I didn't think those 3 runs were going to stand up in the first inning. Yeah. I thought when he was getting shelled in the first inning, 2 of the outs, as we were saying, were just rockets.
Hard outs, yeah.
Like a line drive that looked like it was going to put a hole in the Green Monster. Blue Monster is at Doral Golf Course. So, yeah. You get your monsters mixed up. But I mean, and it was going to maybe even put a hole in the shortstop's head, but he happened to get a glove up in time to snare it. But it didn't look good. I thought that this was going to be like a 9-8 ball game. It turned out it was for the Marlins, but the Red Sox never really got to Alcantara. And even though they got a couple of hits off the guy that came in, closed out the game with 2 innings of relief, they really weren't able to muster much up. They threatened at one point, did they not? What was it? Was it 4-1 or 6-1? And they had a chance maybe to get back into it when they were putting a lot of guys on base, but they weren't able to get any runs across. So that was good. And you're thinking, that's a positive sign. I didn't see this. I thought it was more likely that at this point in the season, Alcantara would finally start saying and suggesting that he would be amenable to a trade. So that was one story that is in complete reverse. Now, the trade of Pablo Lopez for Luis Arraez seemed like a decent move. A lot to give up because you thought you were giving up your second most reliable starter and a guy that you were desperately going to need because the book and the jury, is it still out on Luzardo? What do we think about him?
I mean, no, he's been their second best pitcher throughout the whole year. I mean, I guess if you want to make Yuri Perez their best pitcher, right? He's only done it a month. I still am giving Alcantara the nod as their best pitcher. He's had 6 bad starts. So I'm presuming the guy we've seen for the last 3 years is more so who he is than those 6 starts. But Luzardo's been their most consistent pitcher from beginning of the season to now.
Okay. All right. So you're sold on him because he flashed a lot of potential last year in different spots, and then he would inexplicably all of a sudden get raked.
Yes.
All of a sudden, they're lacing line drives all over the field against Luzardo, and you're asking yourself, well, I mean, the guy looks like he's got stuff, but is it enough? And on top of that, you were thinking that this team was essentially going to be trying to contend with a feeble batting order. And in spite of the fact that Jim Sarney, through various, I would say, less than flattering comments, alluding to you, Mike Lubie Lubitz, in your opinion about the idea that the Marlins lineup absolutely stinks, that he kept pounding home the fact that, look at that, they put 10 runs on the board. What do you say now?
I mean, okay, yeah, and they put
that was one ball game. They only had 2 the other day against Pittsburgh. Come on,
didn't they? The whole Pittsburgh series barely score against one of the worst in baseball, like a whole 4-game set. I think it
was ugliness.
I'll do the math, but I think the combined runs wasn't double digits.
Might have been. So, was this an aberration, an explosion last night? A team scoring 10 runs is somewhat uncommon in Major League Baseball, especially this Marlins lineup. They do it without. It's not one of those teams that's hitting 5 home runs. This is an interesting stat, though, and I didn't get the exact number on it, but they were alluding to the idea, and we were talking about this during one of the breaks there before the show, that the Marlins' overall team batting average is up substantially from what it was last year. that maybe this was part of their new philosophy, as in, hey, why don't you try putting the ball in play and see what happens? Now, that could be a reason why they've hit into an inordinate number of double plays this year, because at least they're getting a bat on a baseball, which in some cases can be detrimental and actually worse than a strikeout, if you can imagine that. But I'm all for it, because I think good things happen when you put the ball in play, as opposed to striking out 16 times a game. And the Marlins are not doing that. Luis Ariz has only struck out 15 times this year. He struck out in the first inning.
Wow, that's amazing. Good for him.
In today's Major League Baseball,
That's
15 strikeouts. And on top of that, he had not struck out in a ball game since June 14th. So he went 2 weeks without striking out. You won't find too many people doing that. Even Tony Gwynn would struggle in that category today, I would think. All of the best hitters in Major League Baseball.
It wasn't that off, actually. The Marlins had 13 total runs over the course of 4 games.
Yes.
So they didn't make me look wrong.
Like we said, not exactly the Bronx Bombers.
Sorry to interrupt.
Every guy that comes up, you're asking yourself, how's this guy even in the majors? What are you talking about, Lubie? I don't disagree with you 100% on that. That's for sure. Some of these guys, you've been denouncing De La Cruz. He's been good all season. But how the hell are they doing it? And can they sustain it? And are the people going to buy into it enough to care, so that when we get around to August, if the team is still in contention, we won't be focusing in because of popular demand. And this is what we try to appeal to. I understand. I'm not one of these guys that does a show and says, oh, geez, you can't talk about that because nobody cares about it. Because we talk about a lot of things nobody seems to care about, at least the general public. That's the perception. Somebody must care about it, because even if you're talking about boxing, which we're going to get into later with Brad Jacobs, how do these pay-per-view matches sell like 1 million buys at $80 a pop if nobody cares about the sport? Are there other sports doing that? I guess if they sold a Super Bowl, how long are we away from that, where the Super Bowl is a pay-per-view event? What do you think?
I know they're trying to get to the place where football playoff games are going to be on these streamers, and then they want it to be sort of like a pay-per-view. I think that's the dumbest thing ever, and I'm curious how that works at all. Like, you may get me not watching a goddamn Super Bowl. Like, I'm not paying. Like, we pay for so much fucking things these days. Like, I don't see myself paying to watch Super Bowl. I mean, we'll see, I guess, but yeah, I'm curious about that.
By the way, I was telling Sonny last night, I would kill it when it came to in-game betting. I'm going to have to start getting involved in this on a regular basis. How quickly will it be before I go broke? Because as De La Cruz was standing at the plate, I thought, you know what? This guy's going to hit a home run. Right at that moment, it occurred to me, Lubie. Now, how much time do you have to get on your app? You know I would be unable to go ahead and place that bet on an app within a short period of time, because it would take me forever to fiddle with the thing. I'm looking for this article, and I'll tell you why there's probably a chance there that we'll never see the Super Bowl as a pay-per-view event. And that's because of these betting sites and the drainage that's happening. Did you see the numbers that are involved in this transaction here? The guy that started Fanatics, who now owns like 3 sports teams, his name's in this article here, but I can't. Let's see if I can find it here real quick. But Fanatics just bought a company called PointsBet. And this is all based on separating you from your money, because you're sending it in like no tomorrow when it comes to sports and sports wagering. So they had to outbid DraftKings, and they just spent $500 million to buy out this other company. This is the company that how did Fanatics make it? With sports apparel? How did they corner the market on that? Fanatics.
Oh,
Are you familiar with this?
Fanatics, the fucking big face shit, or one of the stupid fakakta things? Wasn't that what Fanatics was? One of the things that seemed dumb at the time, but it caught fire and got really popular really fast. And they
probably so.
Money.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this guy made all this money, but he went from like nothing, like poverty. He was selling, old sweaters on Schmata Row in Hallandale, and then all of a sudden he has like millions and jillions of dollars. But the money that's being thrown around in the sports betting industry, I mean, just to buy out competitors, or fuse yourself with another company and become the largest of whatever. is insane. And it's not just one entity that's doing this. It's like the blob. They're just like taking over everybody's bank account. Soon, you won't have a bank account. Your only account will be with these sports betting sites. You'll do all your banking through them. You think, Lubie, is that day coming? Because I was tempted last night to pull the trigger on a couple of in-game sports bets. This guy's going to walk, I'll guarantee you.
I mean, Shirley and I, our dual account that we have is only online. Like there is not an actual build. I mean, Ally has become one of the bigger banks in the country. Maybe, I don't know if it's worldwide, but in the country, it is only online. Like they do not.
Well, when will they be bought out by DraftKings? That's the question. And all of your funds will then be immediately available to you to wager. Just what you need.
Sometime, sooner than later.
All right, we have to run. We've been wandering here in a nameless fashion, but nonetheless, we're about to get focused in the next hour of the program. Tony Segreto, by the way, we wanted to conclude that hour by saying nice win by the Marlins last night. That was the gist of that.
Yes.
That was an hour dissertation on the 10-1 victory over the Red Sox. Did we actually finish a single thought?
No, not at all.
Come to any conclusions there? None. And that's what we're all about here on this program. All right, we're coming back. Tony Segreto. We're trying to make some sense of the universe through the eyes of the great one himself, the iconic broadcaster, brought to you by Texas Roadhouse Restaurants. The one and only Tony Segreto is about to join us. And then later on, about 8:30, Brad Jacobs, recent inductee into the Boxing Hall of Fame, good friend of ours, been based here in South Florida for some time, and it was always really good to me in the business, and did a lot of things, a lot of interesting accomplishments that you got to be thinking outside the box to be this guy. Literally. No pun intended there with the boxing. Is that a pun or is that just a weird illusion? Boxing. All right, back with Tony in a moment. Now that.
The time.
What are you talking about, DeForest? It's 8:04. Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in Style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Are you looking to buy your first home? Have you been turned down for a loan? Do you need to refinance or get money out of your home? Call Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. He's been helping the South Florida community get mortgages for 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. We have the most competitive fixed rates in the market. Call me 24/7, 561-441-2730. And remember, I don't just work banking hours. Make the right choice for your home. Call Choice Mortgage today.
Robert Klein, a pleasure. Huge fans and been bombarded with messages and texts attesting to your brilliance and how much they have enjoyed your work over the years, and still outstanding. Thanks so much. I don't know if you have 1 second real quick.
Yeah.
The Bronx Olympics would look like what? I called a friend of mine and I asked him if he was watching the fencing, and he said he thought that involved moving stolen merchandise. But the Bronx Olympics, so what would be the number one event?
The number one event would be the shout. Who could shout, yo, hey, yo!
The only way to get your morning started is with Defo, joined by Lubie, right here on the Defo Show.
What we gonna do right here is go back, way back into time.
We are now kicking it old school with the one and only Tony Segreto, brought to you by Catholic Health Services and Texas Roadhouse.
Tell me, doctor,
All right, there's an inspiration. Welcome back to the show.
What happened? What happened?
How you doing, Tony Segreto? How you feeling, my friend?
Okay, feeling pretty good. Pretty good.
You look good, kid.
I'm hanging in there. Now I have to ask you what happened. Now we have the.
I do not know. That was the first time that's done that. It was not showing me you, but magically
I was
on.
in some newfangled stream.
Oh,
did you end up on somebody else's video stream? Maybe a better one, I would hope.
Yeah, I think
really
so.
One with more class and distinction. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Good morning. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great. I mean, where do you want to begin here, Tony? I took in a lot of different stuff over the weekend. I know last week we talked about, and you share this fondness for the event with me, and attended more of them and were involved in more big moments than I was. But I thoroughly enjoyed watching the College Baseball World Series, and I'm going to go Segreto on this. You think I'm just cynical and an old tired bastard that hates everything, but I would have to say, among my many sporting experiences that I absolutely loved, that was one of them. And I can't believe, did you find this to be true also? We say this, there's always an evolution in the level of play in sports, but this level of college baseball, seemed to me like it was as good and deep as you could possibly imagine.
So far superior to what we saw. It was not even close. Just the size of the guys, the way they played the game, the way they swung the bats, the way they caught the balls. They just were so far above the guys we played with, or we played against, or we went and covered. I just can't. This is minor league baseball at its best. It's no longer college baseball. It's AAA baseball. Because when you look, there may be a few guys, outliers that are number one picks and what have you, but boy, they're really good. They're really, really good.
I was amazed at the number of guys that were coming out of the bullpen for these teams, and even among their starters that, you're looking at like the 6th, 7th guy that's coming into a game, and he's still bringing it at 95. And, I don't remember. You would have teams, even those great teams, they would have 2 or 3 guys, maybe 4 on some of the top teams that you looked at and you said, wow, those guys are, top level pro prospects and probably going to make it big in the major leagues or have decent careers. But now you're looking at like, 10, 15 guys on a team, it seems like. No, I don't know where all this talent is coming from, but it certainly seems to be manifesting itself in the SEC.
Well, LSU in Florida, boy, they stacked the deck. They were just, it was, first of all, you knew Wake Forest and you knew maybe one other school would fight for the final 2 spots, but you knew that Florida and LSU were the favorites to go in that place. And they were just, I couldn't wait for the finals. I couldn't wait to see them kick it off. So it was great to see. The whole 3-game series was great to see.
No, I found myself, and once again was exposed as a complete and total fraud. Where over the last several years, because we developed a little bit of a relationship with Mick Hubert as a guest on shows, and I had great respect for Mick Hubert's work because he was one of those guys you get certain announcers like Vin Scully or whatever. He wasn't quite maybe at that level, but
no.
As soon as you heard the guy's voice, you knew it was Gator football.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he did. He was an extremely accurate caller of games. He may have been overwhelmingly, as many home announcers tend to be, and rightfully so. They have every right to be.
Sonny was too.
Well, unless he bet on the other team, which I think he was inclined to do, but he took the points, whatever he thought was more valuable. I think he had East Carolina in the points.
Yeah, he did. He did. He did have East Carolina in that game, and he took the over.
Yeah.
but
Hubert was, really, really good at what he did, and we had great respect for him. But so it kind of turned me, and I thought I had softened my stance on the Gators, Tony. That I no longer was going to think immediately about the Gator flop, about that pathetic mamby-pamby excuse for stopping the series with the Hurricanes at football, for Spurrier, for the indignities of Urban Meyer.
The whole
But
thing.
but I found myself relishing. I watched every second of a blowout because with the ping of every beautiful sound coming off those aluminum LSU bats, I saw another Gator getting spanked, and I really found myself in a sadistic fashion enjoying that game to levels I never thought were possible.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every second of it. I just relished in it. You know,
Yes.
it was pour another Coke. Let's go out.
Seeing the look on O'Sullivan's face there, and the whole ball game. I mean, he looked like Buck Showalter watching the Mets this year. Didn't he? I mean, just in pain the entire time and trying to. He was gracious enough to do that in-game interview and actually said something that you would say, okay, this guy's not a bad guy, but still found myself just absolutely. When they started scoring more runs in the ninth, I loved it.
Yeah, you got to give credit to LSU's coach, who they succeeded. Paul Maneri succeeded Skip Bertman and did real well and got in the College World Series and won the College World Series. And now this guy, same thing. He just perpetuates the winning attitude that they have there.
Very nice. Yeah, no, that was good stuff. All right. You probably followed this story along with me, in the same kind of fashion. And that was, at that time in the late 80s and then later on in the early 90s when we finally started to get teams in the other professional sports besides football. And there was always a debate. I don't think it was debatable so much whether basketball would work down here. I think people thought that was going to be fine. We didn't know what it was going to be in the beginning, and it didn't look so good. But the Heat have been the most successful of the three franchises that came on board after the Dolphins were in existence. The Panthers, maybe this year will help them. I don't know if you would consider them a success. The Marlins, most people would consider to be an outright failure as a franchise. And yet, Tony, here we are 30 years later. We're still debating whether baseball is viable here in South Florida or whether it's going to make it, but they're here. I mean, and obviously they've had some measure of success.
I don't know how they measure it because I can't see it. What do they have? 2,000 a game, 3,000 a game.
They're drawing now. They're a little bit. They had some people. Yeah,
they had some people. Yeah, and they had I think 20-something thousand a night, and that was for the freaking Pirates. So
23,000 a night.
They had 21 to 22, I think, each night. Friday.
It wasn't bad. I would have to say I was amazed the number of people in the stands for a Sunday afternoon
numbers. Like when you saw the pictures of the crowd, people were in the seats and there was like a cheer and it was actual fans. Yeah.
Could it catch on, Tony? I mean, what do you think after 30 years?
If they win, they'll catch on. If they win, they'll be, all the has-beens will they'll be coming out of the crowd, coming out of the woodwork. They will wearing their clothes. They'll be wearing their hats. And then if they lose, they'll going back to 21,000.
Maybe I don't know.
That's the sense of it. They may draw well when they play the Yankees at home, when they play the Mets at home, when they play Phillies at home. But other than that, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't know where they. Going down there to the games, 21, it's just too much. It's just too much. But, I don't, the fact of the matter is it's been 30 years and we still only get 21,000 people.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean,
yeah, it's funny too, because, I had some stories attached that unfortunately were not particularly flattering to me, with the early days of the Marlins and, those debates as to whether, and it must have done a zillion shows about whether or not baseball was going to be a viable thing here. The most often, talked about part of that, though, was, well, do we need a domed stadium or not? And that hasn't necessarily been the panacea for success. So you still have to go out there and win games, I guess.
I beg to differ with you in that I think people thought baseball would work because of the Cubans, and thought the Cubans would go out there in droves.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons they went down a little Havana to build the stadium.
Well, and Levon Hernandez, naturally, they were hot pursuit of him.
That didn't work.
Yeah,
and then they were, hoping South Americans would come, and then they were hoping the Anglos would come, and now they just hope
anybody will come.
Yeah, anybody will come. Anybody will come. Well, it's a proven fact that they didn't get the Cubans, and as a result, then they threw up their arms and they figured, what are we going to do?
A perfect opportunity for Donald Trump to buy the team.
and do what?
Get the Cubans to come out. I mean, he was offering them free food there at Versailles.
Yeah,
and they were out in force.
Did you read the story?
He stiffed everybody.
He offered them free food and they stiffed them.
He left.
Sounds like something Lubie and I would do.
Yeah. By the way, did you go to Even Keel yesterday?
We were not there yesterday. No.
We were there last week.
Have you been out there, Tony?
No, I have not been out there. Where is it?
Commercial and A1A.
It's actually very easy to find. It's right
on the corner.
Road, like Commercial and A1A.
I have to go there.
That whole Lauderdale by the Sea thing, which is very, very nice, by the way. I mean, a lot of good restaurants. You can't go wrong there. A lot of good places. I mean, the only thing that could be better is if they put like a Texas Roadhouse in the middle of all.
That's what they should do. They should put a Texas Roadhouse there and leave it.
That would be great. All right, I believe, and this is, we're waiting on Ed Garcia, who's going to join us here. All right, what are you going to zero in on then, Tony? I mean, are you already gearing up for football? It doesn't sound like you're caught up in this baseball season. I know you to be a big baseball fan.
I am a big baseball fan, and I'm bummed about Judge, and I'm bummed about the Yankees. They seem to be shooting themselves in the foot. I'm hopeful that they can come back. And
are you among those that think that Aaron Boone is a buffoon as a manager?
Yes.
Yankee fans are diehard, convicted to that.
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
He's a buffoon. He's an absolute buffoon. That's a good way of putting it. I was thinking of a good word, and that's a good word.
Yeah, I mean, they're constantly calling for his departure, and yet I think I keep looking at Brian Cashman and wondering, how is this guy? I mean, aside from that Lisa Meanwell chick that was chasing him and stalking him, how is this guy getting a free pass across the last 25 years? Many of which now have, not even come close to having the Yankees sniff their goal there. Even with a phenomenal season like Judge had last year, they still couldn't comp a championship.
I mean, when you think about the signings he's had, he's Judge to multi-billion-dollar, $1 million contract. The guy he got from the Marlins. Yeah.
Oh, the Stan one's a disaster.
Disaster.
Judge is worth every penny of
he
what
is.
they're paying him, except for, does he stay in a lineup is always the question.
Yeah, he is. And that, if they had about 7 more judges, then they win it all, but they don't.
If you had 7 judges, you'd be in pretty good shape.
Then they pin their hopes a lot on this rookie shortstop, DeVito.
Volpe,
and Volpe rather. And he's having a so-so year, but he's doing it all himself. So the pitching has let him down. They're recycling pitchers. They're not any young pitchers that they have any strong arms. They're just a mess, an absolute mess.
Well, and you had the usual surprising results that the Tampa Bay Rays were able to achieve. They got off to the sizzling start there, and they tailed off a little bit, but are still sustaining themselves. And the Orioles would be the surprise team. I don't know that I could name you an Oriole player.
I don't think so either.
Is Mark Belanger still out there at shortstop, Tony? I mean,
Mark Belanger. They have what's his name? Cleep. Oh God, the third baseman. I can't think of his name right now. The great third baseman,
Brooks Robinson. Yeah,
Brooks Robinson. He's a third.
Brooksy's out there. Yeah, you almost mentioned my man Clete Boyer. I think
Clete Boyer,
a Yankee fan, because
that
was a big Clete debate Boyer? When I was a kid. Who was a better fielder, Brooks Robinson or Clete Boyer? And we would go with Boyer.
We would go with Boyer too.
Yes.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was really, boy oh boy. We talk about. Going back to look at the tapes and go back and look right at Clete Boyer. He was something special.
Oh, he was great. The Yankee fans appreciated him. Ken, his brother, was a better all-around player, so he got more attention, and maybe deservedly so. But it's funny too, because I remember as a kid, the one thing, as great as he was would say, geez, Cleatboyer, God, they're batting him eighth, and he's only hitting 250. And now you would give that guy $200 million to hit 250.
Oh God,
for the glove alone. So.
Yeah, really. That's the truth of it.
All right, let's talk about something great. Texas Roadhouse restaurants.
Well, I guess it's not going to be here.
Yeah, so we can talk them up because it's real easy. I still have a vision of Tony Segreto. Did you see how, as opposed to you and me, Lubie, he savored that salmon?
Yes.
And we were like, full blown. I mean, almost picking up with our hands in Mayo fashion. The bone-in ribeye.
Folks, when he says he's picking up with hands, he's not kidding.
Oh, no, for sure. It had a bone.
Flintstones. I mean, we were like Barney Rubble eating this thing. It was great.
Yeah. I savored it. I tried.
Yeah, food there is so good.
There's nothing
the variety
you
is
can get
terrific,
there that's bad. There's nothing. I mean, you can get fried chicken, you can get fried trout, you can get you can get steaks, you can get hamburgers, you can get salmon, you can get all kinds of things, and the sides you can get are just spectacular. They make 100% of the sides there by hand every day. Yeah. Every baked potato, every mashed potato, everything. Some restaurants make their mashed potatoes in the morning and then they reheat them. Not Texas Roadhouse. They make them all day long, and the bread speaks for itself. And beyond that, everything is good.
Well, this weekend, the kids were here, and they don't eat a lot of food, and so I do a lot of fast food with them, and I'm sick of doing fast food with them, and they stayed over all weekend long, my sister's two sons. So I was like, what kind of food will they eat that I know is good food? Texas Roadhouse. So I went and picked up Roadhouse burgers, chicken fingers, and again, because Ed's talked about it, chicken fingers you think are just chicken fingers. No, they cut the chicken themselves, they hand bread it, so I knew it's not going to have a bunch of preservatives. I knew it's not going to have a bunch of garbage. And one of the kids got the French fries, steak fries. The other one got mac and cheese. So I knew that they were in good hands with Roadhouse, and they freaking gobbled it up. It was amazing.
Yeah. You can't go wrong. Listen, if you want to go have a good steak, you go there, you sit down, you have a cocktail, you have some appetizers, then you can order what Defo ordered with sirloin, filet. Or you can sit there and order a fish and keep it light on a salad. Way to go. You just can't beat it. You can't beat it.
No, good. Every location just does a wonderful job. Tony, we love you, baby. And thanks so much for joining us here, Old School. It's always a pleasure, my friend. And we have to do another get-together at Texas Roadhouse.
Yes, we got to get out.
Yeah, we have to get out a little bit. And I thank you guys for being patient with me.
No.
And this time,
Tony Segreto, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry we had issues, and thank you for being patient with us. And we love you, and we'll talk to you next week. Great one.
I love you too.
Have a happy 4th.
A great American, Tony Segreto, ladies.
Yeah, talk about Great American 4th of July. So you will be not here, but I presume we'll have a show next Wednesday, and I will talk to the one and only Tony Segreto.
Oh, very nice. All right, Lubie, you're going to carry the banner there. Yeah, it'll be. Oh no, that's 4th of July. The actual 4th is Tuesday.
We're not doing a show that day, but I'm just saying, like, we're not going to see him through 4th. So happy.
Oh, 4th. Wednesday, yeah, no, he'll be there, July 5th. That's my birthday. I'll be 72. I'm turning the corner. Is that officially elderly, or am I already there? I feel already there. That's for sure. I'm trying to stave it off. I mean, pushing Father Time and the Grim Reaper away is, it takes more than you think. That it's going to. When you're young, Lubie, youth is truly wasted on the young.
Oh, yeah.
The battles are entirely different, once you get into this stage, no matter how much, should I regret doing all of that cocaine? What do you think? This is a question for the day. There's your poll question.
Should I regret?
Roberto Duran says he has no regrets. No regrets. Not even a no mas fight. Is that not the way to go through? Especially.
Oh yeah.
You don't realize it's the latter stages of this long and wonderful trip, but you want to make them as good as possible, don't you? So and you want to stave off. What if you can make triple digits?
Oh, good.
You don't want to make it as some feeble, old crippled up thing where, you can't do anything and you got nothing left. That'd be kind of rough. But who wants this to end? I don't. Right?
No, Lana goes long. To me, it's funny. When you're young, you think elderly and you think 70s. What I think is it's more of a state of mind and a way of life. Like you could see someone in their 60s who looks and lives like they're in their 90s.
Yeah.
You can see someone in their 90s. Like Shirley was traveling and she met a pack of women who were like in their late 80s and their husbands had died. And they're like, all right, we're going to live our lives. We're not going to act like it's over. And they were traveling the world at like 88. To me, I'm not going to call that person elderly. Like if you're fucking going to China and scaling the Great Wall, you're not elderly. Like, I'm sorry.
No. You're running the high hurdles in the Senior Olympics. I respect it, even if the time is not exactly going to threaten.
To me, it's a state of mind. Like I'm not
Lewis.
Jeff DeForest elderly. Like the way you live your life is not like an elderly.
It's getting there. I have to say, it's becoming more and more of a sedate life. But no, you got to stay sharp. And one way to do it is to keep doing this. So, we're looking forward to, sort of carving out a whole new identity for things. And I think it's going to be great in the long run, Lubie, because that'll keep you stimulated if you explore your creativity. That definitely helps out a lot. There was a thing on Facebook the other day, as there are often these kind of sort of survey questions, greatest or most memorable line in any movie, of which there are many. I mean, you could go all over the place with that. But one of the great ones from Shawshank Redemption, Lubie, as it was said by the Timothy Robbins character, right? Get busy living or get busy dying. No, I think that was part of the narration.
100%.
And yeah, get busy living or get busy dying. And that's what you have to do. You got to get busy living. That's what it's all about. I think that keeps you going there. That's why I never was inclined, to get sucked in by my mother's desires to have me move to Century Village.
There it is. That's when I'll know that you're elderly.
When I throw in a towel on that front.
No, I was gonna say no, not the Century. I don't care. Century actually is pretty cool. I can see as long as you take advantage and you're not. Like your mother just like didn't do a lot of the stuff, but like
my mother talked about doing this stuff. She just never did it.
They have a lot going on. I'm telling you right now. Remember, I lived in my grandma's condo for like a year because it was like paid off, and my mom was paying the taxes and shit. And I was like,
you don't have to explain. I mean, you were broke. You were in radio.
Well, no, I just been divorced.
Yeah.
So like most people find a shitty apartment. It was like, why not? I just took the fees off my mom's hands and it gave me some more to eat. I'm telling you right now, those people did not. You hear music loud late at night. You'd see these people.
Partying.
Yeah, these people live their goddamn.
Because if you know the Grim Reaper's right around the corner, why go out the door sad and decrepit? You want to be partying right to the wire, don't you? Escalate your activities, if anything.
What I was going to say is Julian said it. And the reality is it's not true because I know more young people playing pickleball than old. But for you and how you're dead set against it, the minute you start picking up pickleball, you may be an elder.
Oh, no, that's when I know it's over, man. It's Richard Steele time. Step in and stop it, Rich. Well, what do you mean? He's still got plenty of fight left in him. Speaking of fighting, we're going to talk to Brad Jacobs here in just a minute. And Brad has been a good friend of mine for a long time. Tremendous accomplishments in the sport of boxing. Now the CEO of Top Rank, the Bob Arum organization. I think he's over Arum at this stage. I think Bob's kind of, stepped aside and he said, hey, let me put this in somebody responsible's hands. And it's Brad Jacobs. You see him all the time. He was, always in the corner there with Manny Pacquiao. He was kind of his U.S. guide. You'd see him all over the world with Manny. Just a tremendous career. And we'll talk about that with Brad Jacobs and some upcoming fights that also look to be, as our good friend Al Bernstein would say, very intriguing matchups, Lubie. Back with Brad Jacobs in a moment. Now that. Imagine we know another Hall of Famer going to join us on the show. It's 8:31.
Yes, sir.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched. Steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
Recently, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by asleep to say we end the heartache and 1,000 natural shocks.
What could that have been about except
Gambling.
to hedge or not to hedge?
The modern day odd couple, Defo and Lubie, are on now. It is, of course, the Defo Show.
Welcome back to the show. Great to have you with us here on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, Michael Lubit's been having a great time all morning long, trying to milk one baseball game for a couple of hours of conversation here on the show. We've gotten into everything from hideous breakups to all over the planet, including the amazement at people who don't just come out and say he's on tape saying it. But it never ceases to amaze me how people of great distinction and accomplishment are willing to subject themselves to being on this program. And
that's really what I said to him. I said, congratulations. And I appreciate that you're willing to join us after this ridiculously great achievement.
Right. I mean, you achieved something that anybody would dream about. And in this case, we want to welcome to the program. And I've known this gentleman for a long time, always the epitome of integrity and in what can be a very unscrupulous business. You would have to say that he was more inclined to be scrupulous. And we welcome to the show the Boxing Hall of Famer now, our good friend Brad Jacobs, to the program. Brad, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Defo. How are you guys doing?
Good morning, Mr. Hall.
Doing well. I mean, I was guilty of such an oversight. I'm watching, the boxing on Showtime, I guess this past weekend. And they're showing videos of the ceremonies at the Boxing Hall of Fame. And there you are. Incredible. And I'm thinking, wow, they did it. They recognize this man for the innovations that he's brought to this sport and sustained level of excellence in, making the sport worth watching. And congratulations. I mean, tell us your feelings about it. It had to be a very moving and touching, significant moment for you.
Yeah, it really was. As much as I'm not a sort of limelight guy, it was a lot of fun. It was a great honor. I was told, I think it was maybe last summer, that I'd be on the ballot for this year. And then in December, I was in London for a show and was at dinner, and I got a call from Ed Brophy, who heads the Hall of Fame. And he said that, I was picked to be honored by them, and with greats like Tim Bradley and Raul Marquez in this year's class, and Seth Abraham from HBO, and Tim Ryan. So it was terrific, and even more special. I was the first balloter, so didn't have to sit around for 3 or 4 years to get in. So it was great. It was a great weekend. They have a parade. They have induction ceremony, etc. So it was a lot of fun, and had my kids up there, so they enjoyed it. It was a good weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't have to twist in a win for like 15 years like Jerry Kramer. I mean, or Cooch. I mean, how many times do we have to talk to a dejected and despondent Kuchenberg on Radio Rows at Super Bowls, as he said, I don't know why they don't like me. But no, congratulations. It's quite a distinction. And I was thinking the other day, I was saying, wow, I mean, look at all the things this guy has done. And these are just the things that I'm aware of. So I wanted to get back into maybe some of your roots in the game. And we know it's a game that's inclined to bizarre elements of circus. So we might want to explore some of that. But the first time I was aware of your presence in the game was, I guess, when you were doing the Tuesday night fights. And we had a mutual friend that went as Charles J. And he said, yeah, that's my buddy Brad Jacobs, man. He's the guy that's behind this whole thing. And that was quite an innovative series. I mean, right up there with the Gillette Fight of the Week at one point.
Yeah, it was Tuesday Night Fights was a great run. Just prior to Tuesday Night Fights, I actually got into the boxing game with a promoter in Tampa named Alessi Promotions.
Yes.
And spent several years there, sort of working, every little job you could think of in the business, picking up the buckets, getting the guys from the airport, whatever it took. And then I sort of switched over from the promoter side to the television side. And as you say, sort of ran this USA Tuesday Night Fights, which other than Mike Tyson, we had every possible named fighter you could think of in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, appear on the show either on the way up, on the way down, or in the midst of their careers. And I'm talking, Roberto Duran, Larry Holmes, Roy Jones Jr., the list goes on and on. And we were doing shows about 45 times a year, all over the country and all over the world. So that was a great run. And like all good things, came to an end when new ownership came into USA Network, and they thought that the 2 hours on a Tuesday night could be spent better than on boxing. Which,
sure. Gilligan's Island, I missed that show. I really did.
Yeah, the most important part of that show was when the business was in a little bit of a different model than it is now. That was, let's call it the AAA team for HBO. We would hold guys up, and then guys would skip over to HBO. And when that went away, it hurt the HBOs, the Showtimes of the world, because there wasn't a place for the fans to sort of develop a following for some fighters.
Well, when did you decide it was a good idea to have a George Foreman comeback?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about circumstances and what makes sense. And, I got to be honest, in the very beginning, I wasn't thrilled about having George on the air. You're talking about where you sort of reserve your main event for these top current athletes. And now we're going to go down to some broken down former heavyweight champion that's way overweight. And, why are we doing something like that? And of course, it turned into one of the great comeback stories of all time.
Pretty amazing, yeah. I mean, he was bloated like Shaq was his last year with the Heat. When he came back, and you can't imagine he could beat anyone. Maybe in a matchup if the timing would have worked out or coordinated itself with Butterbean Ash or something. But he ended up knocking out Michael Moore, and you were part of the whole catalyst behind that. Brad Jacobs, our special guest here. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, always a funny story for me, but not really that funny. It is one of my first big television deals I did was securing the worldwide television rights to Michael Moore for the reign of his heavyweight championship that ended in about 45 minutes again.
So do you still have the video of Teddy Atlas screaming at him in the corner with the cell phone, which is one of my favorite, pieces of corner work? I mean, you're looking at a guy that needs to be Baker acted, and he's screaming, "Your children are going to be crying." I don't know what he was saying, but I guess it worked. That was a fight here in Miami, wasn't it?
No, it was in Vegas.
Oh, Vegas. All right. Yeah. Were you there for that one? That was a beauty.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that was in the days when the cell phones were a brick. I mean, this wasn't like even a flip phone. It was a giant thing, like, something you would see Rock Newman throwing at somebody in a Galata fight.
That's right. That's right. There's a special guest at the Hall of Fame. Andrew Galata was up there.
Oh, wow.
Is that right? Did he hit anybody in the balls? I mean, were there any low blows struck?
Menacing as usual.
That'd be tough if you're going to the podium to make your speech. You want to thank your family, and the next thing you know, you're talking like a soprano. Right. Lubie's got something for you, Brad.
Well, I was just going to say, Brad, it's interesting. Like you're talking about television, talking about entertainment. Boxing has sort of had to roll with the punches as it became a pinnacle pay-per-view sport between Showbox and HBO Boxing. And then we saw the Zone. And now you see with the streamers, it's sort of cutting into pay-per-view. What is it like now to deal with putting on fights in a world where we seem to have gotten away from pay-per-view and gone all in on streamers?
Yeah. Well, look, boxing has always been a programming that television networks, streamers, whoever they are, find compelling because it delivers a good audience. You can schedule it whenever you want. In certain cases, it could be used as filler programming, whatever it may be. But it's all year long. There's no season. When a television network needs a fight, they'll schedule a fight. But the complete landscape of the television boxing business has changed, especially for us at Top Rank, to a year-long business versus a one-night business. And when I say that, it always used to be, in the role of promoters, hey, let's go to XYZ Network, HBO, Showtime, ESPN, and put on a show. And, you build towards that night, and you build towards your fighters being on that show, and you're totally dependent on that fighter winning to get another show. And that's no way to run a business, a successful business. We put it that way. So, when we went to ESPN and said, hey, we want to do this on a year-long basis with you for many years, develop talent, develop a following, build up the ratings, the audience for ESPN is very different than it was at HBO. HBO, was skewing to an older audience, more affluent, but older. But your window of opportunity was only 30, 35 million people, where at ESPN, the demographics are much lower, multicultural. And at the time, you were in 90 million homes.
Oh, wow.
So, that kind of thing opened up a bigger window to bigger fights. And I think you find, not only on ESPN, but the Zone and some other outlets, sort of bigger fights happening now where they would have, like you said, happened on pay-per-view, let's call it 10 years ago. Some of it has to do with the money is a little bit more available. The fighters are more willing and want to have large exposure. And, in the case of the DAZNs of the world, they have huge pockets and guys fight on the network. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't get to see it. Doesn't mean it wasn't a good fight. Doesn't mean it wasn't a good production. It's just their availability is less than, an over-the-air network combined with a streaming property that, ESPN has and a few others have.
He's the CEO of Top Rank Boxing, Brad Jacobs, just this year inducted a week or so ago into the Boxing Hall of Fame, and it's a pleasure to have him here on the program. I mean, the other thing, I remember being in the third grade at PS20, Brad, and we had to write a paper about, or some kind of research paper about a controversial topic, political topic, whatever, and mine was on whether or not boxing should be abolished, which was a popular topic at that time. There had been a couple of ring deaths, and they had been on TV and well publicized, and there was a lot of speculation that the sport was finished, that this was going to be it. And that speculation's been out there forever. And then MMA came along, and all the kids, the young kids, seemed to be, caught up in that. And there was a lot of betting action on it, and, a lot of excitement about it. How many years have you been fending off that notion that boxing is dead?
Well, look, it's a popular theme amongst people, because they don't maybe see, a Mike Tyson or a Muhammad Ali or something like that really taking, the forefront of the business. But our business is very regionalized and localized. There are fighters like, by example, some of your audience may or may not know Tyson Fury as heavyweight champion, but his last two fights in the UK drew 94,000 people to Wembley Stadium and 70,000 people to Tottenham Stadium. It doesn't get any bigger than that. And I don't care what sport it is. I mean, even the people at Wembley were impressed by the number of people that came. So it's about timing. It's about who the athletes are. It's about the fight. No, is boxing a day in, day out sport that, a 14-year-old kid is going to be dreaming about now? No. But there are points in most sports fans' careers where they sort of get the boxing bug, and it's sort of, and more, no one more than you knows this, Defo. It's hard to get out of your system. And
no doubt.
So, yeah, to say it's dead is just not really understanding the business. And again, I'm not fooling myself. We're not the NFL, but there's a niche in there for us that's big enough that these events are happening, all over the world, all the time, to big numbers.
These European crowds, I mean, they're very, very different than what you see in the United States. They're not afraid to throw like heavy shit towards the ring.
No.
What kind of situations? I mean, I don't know. This was probably too long ago, but you always think of the Hagler Alan Minter fight where, he's having to duck beer bottles, and then there was that Kendall Holt Ricardo Torres fight I called in Colombia where I literally got hit with a couple of beer bottles. What are some of the more bizarre things that you've seen? I don't know if you were at that Galana Bow fight, but that you've been witness to, because you're always right around the ring there at the conclusion of the fights, or inside it.
Top two for me in that respect, sort of older fights. First one was Calvin Grove and Jorge Paez in Mexicali, Mexico.
Oh yeah,
it was the last televised 15-round fight.
Oh jeez.
And it was going to a decision, and it looked like Jorge Paez was going to lose, to a very favorable Mexican crowd in Mexicali in an outdoor bull ring. And it was like 100 and something degrees, and so it turns out that Paez loses the fight, and they didn't have the foresight to pour beers into plastic cups.
Yeah,
they had glass bottles everywhere, and they started raining the ring with glass bottles, and I got hit right on the top of the head with one.
Wow.
With my head open.
Oh, jeez.
But luckily, we were at a bullfighting ring, and a guy dragged me to the back so they used to sew up the bullfighters.
Oh, my God.
Jesus.
What the hell?
Just happen to have a first-rate medical facility there that treats that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, very dangerous, right? I mean, you're getting hit from the upper deck there. Wasn't that a fight that had like some ridiculously large crowd? I remember watching that Calvin Grove fight with Paez.
Yeah, it's like 18, 20,000 outdoors. It was so hot. It was crazy. And then the other one involves your fighter you just talked about, the guy I saw last week, Riddick Bowe, but not with Andrew Galata, but with Elijah Tillery, if you remember that, where Elijah Tillery tried to kick Riddick Bowe during a fight, and he went crazy, and Bowe got nuts, and then Bowe's manager, Rock Newman, ran up on the ring apron and literally grabbed Elijah Tillery and threw him over the ropes. So
Newman was always in the center of this sort of thing, wasn't he?
Yeah, you got to look that up on YouTube. It's pretty funny.
Unbelievable. All right, for a long time, Top Rank, and I guess it was sort of an acrimonious split. We're promoting. You guys were promoting Terrence Crawford. And there's been a lot of debate about Terrence Crawford. You watch him, he's icing guys, and you're thinking, wow, this guy's really, really good. And I believe that he is really, really good. And yet the knock on him is that, maybe Warren Buffett could come down from the upper deck and put up more resistance than some of the guys he's fought. I don't know that he's fought a total string of bums or nobodies, but what do you make of this fight coming up between Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford, which everybody's been waiting for years? Is it too late for this thing to be really a proving ground for either guy, and how much is at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, look, just to be clear, you've already mentioned it, we promoted most of Terrence Crawford's career up until his last fight. or the fight before his last fight, excuse me. And, regardless of his relationship with us, I still think he's the best fighter in the world at the moment.
Okay.
And, are those days slipping away? Yes. Is the Spence Crawford fight what it could have been on a global basis, 2-3 years ago? Maybe not. But they said that about Pacquiao and Mayweather and on, historically about a lot of big fights that were sort of past their expiration date. They, fights happen when they happen for whatever reason they are, and then the public can make a determination if they want to spend their hard-earned money watching it. And in the case of Mayweather Pacquiao, that everybody said was 5 or 8 years too late, it still holds the records for pay-per-view buys, the gate in the arena, financially, et cetera. So, so much for that. But back to the subject, I think the fight will do very well in today's world. On pay-per-view, the biggest problem with pay-per-view, which we were actually going to talk about a little earlier and I forgot, is, the hijacking of the signal and people, broadcasting when they're not supposed to broadcast. And it really, really hurts the business in the end, but it's reality and it's got to be dealt with. And, as producers and promoters, we understand that's part of the game. But to answer your question, I think Crawford wins the fight. I think it'll be a good fight. To me, it's probably a 60-40 fight in Crawford's favor. Spence has had some issues with being in car wrecks and things of that nature, which, may or may not be a problem for him. We'll see on the night.
Late round knockout, maybe. Terrence Crawford over Spence.
Decision.
Okay, it goes a distance, and let's hope Adelaide Bird isn't one of the scorekeepers there, the judges at the fight. All right, my experience with Manny Pacquiao, I believe, sort of began at the beginning because, we in the media, and you're very well versed in this. So we'll take any freebie trip and opportunity to go to Las Vegas on somebody else's dime. So they were begging members of the Miami media or any city, I guess, to go out and cover a Oscar De La Hoya Castillejo fight in Las Vegas. And I thought, sure, I'll go out there and do a show. What do I care? That'll be great. And on the undercard was Manny Pacquiao. And he was going against, Ledwaba, who I think was undefeated from Ghana. And what was considered to be like the second coming, like a small version of Azuma Nelson. And sure enough,
he was the opponent.
Yeah, and Pacquiao, I guess, was a late substitute, and he iced this guy. And I remember, I think very well, John Rudy, who used to write for the LA Herald Examiner as a boxing writer, and then became some kind of a official or whatever, I guess, with the boxing commission out there, or publicist. And he said. Before the fight, he said, I like the Filipino in here. I'm like, who the hell is a Filipino? Could you ever have envisioned, and maybe you can relay, to our audience, Brad, some of your experiences with Manny Pacquiao that would give them a little bit more of an idea about this man's character and the way he conducts his business?
No, look, a global phenom for sure. I've never... I know they've happened before, but I've never been a part of sort of, let's call it a traveling circus that was so huge, so loved, et cetera, than Manny and his time at the top. I mean, it was great. If we were fighting in Las Vegas, sold out, he would bring literally 1,000 of his favorite people from the Philippines, fly them over, give them hotel rooms, put them up, have them fight. I mean, crazy stuff. And the funniest thing to me was the biggest event I ever did with Manny wasn't a fight, but it was a press conference for the Marquez 3 fight, I think it was, in Manila in the Philippines. And they billed it as the world's largest press conference, which it turned out to be with 90,000 people in the center of Manila, the city. It was crazy, but yeah, terrific ride with him.
Good stuff, yeah. And what do you think? I mean, Has he gotten out of politics now in the Philippines? Or is he still, involved in that? And what do you see him doing?
He's learned his lesson with the politics. He tried. He was a senator. He ran for president. Just that didn't work out. But he's a man of the people there for sure, and he'll never have to worry about a free meal in the Philippines. But it's a crazy business, and I hear he's on the lookout for another fight. So who knows? And
oh yeah, get out of here. I'd rather he put out another record.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, do you still have a copy vinyl of Y'all Must Have Forgot? Because you were promoting Roy Jones Jr. for some time.
I've got the CD. I got the vinyl. It's right in my collection with 45s with The American Dream by Dusty Rhodes.
Oh,
I didn't know he had a song. We're going to have to download a copy of that someday. Well, Brad, always a pleasure, my friend. Very enlightening stuff. And it's good to see the game is thriving. And you now CEO of Top Rank Boxing. Congratulations on that and your continued success in the business. And of course, induction. Canastota, New York, into the Boxing Hall of Fame. Tremendous job. And yet another guy that we can put on our list now that we find unfathomable that you would distinguish yourself or take a shot at, your reputation by coming on the show. We appreciate it greatly.
Guys, always great being on. Look forward to the next time and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, Brad.
All right. Thanks so much. Brad Jacobs. Interesting, man. Nobody was closer to Pacquiao than this guy. In the United States, I would say. I mean, he was when he was with Top Rank, he was kind of the one that was assigned to you're Manny's guy. You're his connection here, and they had a great relationship. That's interesting, huh? He used to fly like 1,000 Filipinos in, put them up in hotels in Vegas. I mean, can you imagine these people? This was a guy that came from the streets and apparently never forgot it.
No,
Pacquiao.
No, he's a god there. I mean, he in the Philippines was the Beatles. I mean, he was literally everything. Everything to everyone. I mean, he literally was a senator. It was freaking crazy. The guy, and that's the thing. He became the biggest star in the world for a little bit there. I mean, when he was at his pinnacle, I feel like people forget.
People caught on to him. I think after he was actually past his most exciting fights. Yeah. It wasn't like he had deteriorated. I mean, this wasn't like an aging Mayweather milking pay-per-view for all it was worth and not really engaging because his fights were always exciting.
Yes.
But his fights earlier at lower weights with Barrera
Morales
and Eric Morales. That was probably, vintage Pacquiao, where, you looked and you said, my God, look at this kid fight. Unbelievable. Yeah. And I guess when he iced Ricky Hatton, that was also a big shock. He was moving up in weight. And remember that? I think we were watching that fight in Kentucky with the lovely and talented one. Didn't we go to a club somewhere? Libby, were you with me?
No, I was in Tallahassee. I remember that. That was one where because it was in Great Britain, I think, and they were trying to really give.
Ricky Hatton was like the big deal, right? He was the big maca.
I was out of college already, but I went back to visit friends, and we always did this. We always would get the big fights. And I remember we would get a keg, we get a big fight, and I was visiting my buddies who were still in Tallahassee, and they made it this big production. I think in the first 30 seconds or some shit.
He just took him right out. It was very exciting. Those Marquez fights were classic also.
Marquez were good, but that was when he was getting older, and Marquez was.
The Timothy Bradley decision, that was ugly. I mean, that was a total robbery.
Yeah, that was
interesting, yeah. Hitting the head with a beer bottle, man. Brad Jacobs.
That's crazy.
Split his skull open. But fortunately for him, they're in a bullfighting ring.
So they're ready for it.
And had the ability to stitch up any cut. Vito Antifermo could have fought there, and they were ready for it. Okay, we're going to run. Well, we'll see you on Mike Mayo's Lunchbox. That's 12 o'clock today, and that should be a lot of fun. Yes. And then later on this week, tomorrow at Aruba Cafe out there on the beach. That's always great. Looking forward to doing some dining and yakking there. And Friday, we're out there at Gulfstream Park. And then it's the July 4th weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Can't believe it, man. The turning point of the summertime. This is when summer When would you say it officially begins for people like going to the beach and barbecuing and all that stuff?
I'd say Memorial Day.
Memorial Day? That's when you're kicking off?
I would say Memorial Day, but to me, 4th of July, July 4th is like the pinnacle of summer. It's
Do
like,
we have summer here, though? We do.
oh, it's
I
hot
say
enough.
we don't have seasons. We have schwitzing hot with scalding and steaming humidity and, and lightning constantly.
I
Those are the
always
four
say
seasons.
it's always hot here. There's no difference. And then the last few days, I realized, no, there's a difference.
Oh, man.
I was passed out yesterday outside for 10
Really?
minutes.
How about these guys that are doing like landscaping?
I feel for them.
How do they do it, man?
I give them a
And
lot.
what happened to the traditional lawnmower? Everybody mows grass now with a weed whacker. What is that?
I think
Seems a little odd, doesn't it?
I don't know if they mow them. I know my next door neighbor uses a lawnmower.
And did the guy market the leaf blower before its time, where he hadn't figured out what to do with the leaves?
Yeah, because all it does is blow them around, but they still sit there. So they come back eventually. Like they don't get
It's the same shit. Yeah, I mean, the guy's blowing like a maniac, a leaf blower. It's constant. That would be the one noise that is in the constant, ambient sound of South Florida, is it not? The leaf blower.
Yes.
Is that true in other places too? But there's always a leaf blower in the background somewhere.
Yes.
Even here, right? I mean, can you hear that coming through here? Leaf blowers right outside my window. But what is I mean, it's such a dysfunctional piece of equipment, isn't it? First of all, how could they not, I mean, you'll see these guys go up with those aerial fans, where they have like the little fan and it's a kite.
Yeah.
They don't make as much noise as the freaking leaf blower. And that's flying a guy like over the Dania Pier. It's incredible. I mean, I have great admiration for those guys, but, don't make any sub jokes, all right? I did want to put the logo of Spirit Airlines around a picture of the submersive. See if anybody got any kind of a kick out of that, but then I thought better of it.
Ocean Gate.
Yeah. That's like Facebook jail, no? I mean, they probably, sponsored heavily by Spirit Airlines, right? You think Zuckerberg is going to let that go? No way. All right, we'll see you at 12 o'clock today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. A lot of fun being with you. Thanks to Brad Jacobs. That was very exciting for us because it really is like a sincerely great guy.
Look, Top Rank was the main boxing impetus that I knew, and he's the freaking CEO. Like, amazing. That's great. I'm so happy for him. Like, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tyson Fury, I believe, is still being promoted by Top Rank, and his fights are universal. Where 90,000 at the stadium, and look, there was a lot of interest in those Fury Wilder fights, especially.
Oh, yeah.
And he keeps announcing his retirement, and he probably has now made more comebacks than our man Roberto Duran, no doubt. All right, we have to run. We'll see you next time as we leave you know that.
The time.
Tomorrow, by the way, we will have a trivia challenge, will we not?
We will.
Okay, and we have some other excitement coming up. Tommy Hutton's going to join us.
We have Hutton Man, who's finally back in the booth. A great deal. If he's not doing every game, it seems like he's doing most of the games.
I think he told me he was doing like 70 games this year, which is pretty good. That's most of the home games.
Most of the games, except for the ones. Remember, again, he does take time off. He does live his life. He's a really good quality of life guy, work-life balance. So I would think if he's not doing games, then it's his choice because they finally realized, oh, shoot, we screwed that one up. Jeter's gone. Let's go back to the guy that South Florida beloved. So we will have him, and we will have a later, but still highly apart trivia challenge.
Yeah. Okay, good. That'll be a lot of fun. All right. Thanks, Lubie. We'll see you guys next time as we leave it on that.
The time.
It's 9:05.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my soul.